My fiancé cheated on me with my sister for 6 months, but when my parents defended her and forced me to forgive, I cut them all out, and they never expected I'd leave them out of my wedding forever. I'm 29 years old. I work at a university library, cataloging old books, and I need to tell this story because what happened 3 years ago basically destroyed my relationship with my parents and completely changed my view of what family means. The truth is, I still have a hard time processing it all, but I guess I should start from the beginning so it makes sense. I grew up being the typical responsible older sister. You know, the one who got good grades, the one who never caused problems, the one who always had a book in her hands while my sister Angela, 2 years younger than me, was the complete opposite. She was the artistic one, the outgoing one, the one who filled any space with her personality. And honestly, it never bothered me because we were very different, but we got along well. Or so I thought. My parents, Gregory and Sandra, were always the traditional type, very focused on keeping the family together no matter what. That whole thing about family comes first and problems get solved at home, you know what I mean? I met Philip when I was like 25. He was 28 at the time, I think. He worked in digital marketing, and we met at a coffee shop near the university where I was doing my master's degree. It was one of those casual things. I was reading and he commented on the book. We started talking and basically didn't stop. He was handsome, confident, charismatic, everything I wasn't, and he made me feel special in a way I had never experienced. After 2 years of dating, he proposed to me at an Italian restaurant. Nothing super elaborate, but I liked it because it was intimate and meaningful. And I said yes without thinking twice because I really thought we were going to build a life together. The thing is that Angela and Philip always got along well, maybe too well looking back. But at the time, I just thought it was nice that my fiancé and my sister got along because it made family gatherings easier. Angela was studying graphic design, and sometimes she would ask Philip for advice about social media stuff or marketing, and he would help her with her school projects, supposedly normal things. I was so caught up in my work and planning the wedding that I didn't see anything weird at all. And that's what hurts me the most when I think about it now, that I was so naive. Everything exploded on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it perfectly because I had just gotten home after a long meeting at the library about the new cataloging system. I opened my laptop to check some emails, and there it was. A complete chain of emails between Philip and Angela that had somehow ended up in my inbox. I think Philip got confused when forwarding something, or I don't know. But basically, I saw months of conversations that made me feel like the floor was opening up beneath my feet. They weren't just messages between friends or family. They were intimate, romantic, explicit emails. And when I started checking the dates, I realized they had been seeing each other behind my back for like 6 months. 6 months. While I was planning my wedding to him. I sat there reading email after email, and there was everything. Plans to see each other when I was at work, messages saying I love you to each other, even discussions about what they were going to do about me because apparently Angela wanted Philip to break up with me, but he couldn't decide. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach over and over again. I couldn't breathe properly. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the mouse. And the worst part was that in the emails, Angela wrote things like she had always been the fun one and that Philip had made a mistake choosing me first. As if our entire relationship had been a mistake, and I was some kind of consolation prize. Philip got home at like 7 at night, calm as always, gave me a kiss on the cheek and asked what was for dinner, and I just looked at him and said, "We need to talk now." I showed him the emails and the face he made. God, I'll never forget that expression of absolute panic. He tried to explain himself, told me it had been a mistake, that Angela had come on to him and he had been weak, that he loved me and that the time they'd been together wasn't as long as it seemed, basically pure lies to try to minimize what he had done. I told him to leave my apartment immediately, that we had to finish the lease together but that I would sleep in the guest room until I found another place, and that I never wanted to talk to him again. That night I called Angela. It was like 11 at night, but I didn't care. I needed to hear it from her directly. She answered, half asleep, and when I said I found the emails, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end. Finally, she told me, "I'm sorry. We didn't want you to find out like this." And I exploded. I yelled at her, how could they do this to me? That she was my sister. That family wasn't supposed to stab you in the back. Angela started crying and told me she really loved Philip, that she had tried to stay away but couldn't, that things just happened and that eventually I would understand. I hung up on her and blocked her number, because I didn't want to hear one more word of her cheap justifications. The next day, I went to my parents' house. They lived like half an hour from my apartment in a quiet residential neighborhood, and I told them everything. I thought they would support me, that they would be just as outraged as I was. But my dad Gregory's reaction was to tell me he understood I was hurt, but that Angela was my sister, and that families go through difficult times. My mom Sandra basically repeated the same thing, adding that Philip wasn't worth dividing the family over and that with time I could forgive Angela. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them that Angela had been seeing my fiancé for 6 months. It wasn't a small mistake or a silly fight. It was a massive betrayal that had completely destroyed my life. My dad told me I was being dramatic, that people make mistakes and that what was important was keeping the family together. And my mom added that Angela was younger and had acted impulsively, but that I, as the older sister, should be more understanding. I stood up and told them I wasn't going to forgive Angela just because they wanted to pretend everything was fine, that what she had done was unforgivable, and that if they couldn't understand that, then we had a serious problem. My dad raised his voice and told me I was being selfish, that family always forgives, and I left that house without saying anything else because I knew if I stayed, I was going to say things I might regret. The next few months were horrible, honestly. I stayed in my apartment alone because Philip finally moved out. I lost like 10 pounds because I could barely eat. I missed work a lot because there were days when I literally couldn't get out of bed. And the only person who was really there for me was my best friend Abigail. Abby and I had known each other since college. She worked in architecture and had always been like my real sister, much more than Angela, apparently. She let me stay at her house for several weeks when I couldn't pay rent on my own. She brought me food. She sat with me while I cried. She basically saved me from sinking completely. My parents called me every 2 or 3 weeks, pressuring me to talk to Angela, telling me that she was suffering too and that I needed to start the forgiveness process. One day, my mom even suggested that maybe I had been a distant fiancé, and that's why Philip had sought connection elsewhere, and that hurt me so much that I hung up and didn't answer her calls for almost a month. It was like nobody in my family understood the magnitude of what had been done to me, like I was the bad guy in the story for not wanting to forgive and move on like nothing happened. Like 8 months of that hell passed, and eventually I started going out again with friends, doing things I liked. I went to therapy for a while, which helped quite a bit, and slowly I started to feel like maybe I could rebuild my life. I met Adrian at a university alumni reunion. He was a civil engineer. He was 31 years old, and he was completely different from Philip in every way. Adrian was calm, honest, didn't have that inflated ego that Philip always had. And when I told him what had happened to me with my ex and my sister, his reaction was to tell me that those people didn't deserve one more second of my time. I fell in love with him in a different way, more mature, I guess. And after a year and a half of being together, he proposed to me on a trip we took to the mountains. When I told my parents I was going to marry Adrian, their first reaction was to ask me if I was going to invite Angela to the wedding. I told them no, that Angela had no place in my life, much less at my wedding, and my dad told me that was unacceptable, that family should be present at important moments. I explained that Angela had stopped being my family the day she decided to sleep with my fiancé for months, but my dad insisted that I was being resentful and that after almost 2 years I should have gotten over it. My mom added that Angela had broken up with Philip a long time ago, as if that changed anything, and that she was very sorry, but I didn't budge an inch. Adrian and I continued with the wedding plans. We wanted something medium-sized, like 100 people, in a nice venue with a garden. Nothing super extravagant but elegant. And obviously Abigail was going to be my maid of honor because she had been there when nobody else was. Like 2 months before the wedding, my dad called me and told me that if Angela wasn't invited, then neither he nor my mom were going to attend, that they weren't going to be part of a celebration that excluded a family member. I told him that was his decision and that I respected it, but that I wasn't going to change my mind. And he told me I was forcing him to choose between his daughters and that wasn't fair to him. But wait, because it gets worse. My mom called me a few days later and not only insisted on the Angela thing, but also suggested that maybe Abigail shouldn't be my maid of honor because it was like rubbing salt in Angela's wound. That Abby had been part of distancing me from my family and that it would be a gesture of reconciliation if I removed her from the wedding. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her that Abigail was my best friend and the only person besides Adrian who had been unconditionally by my side, and that before removing her from my wedding, I'd rather not get married. My mom accused me of having changed, of having become hard and selfish, And I responded that no, I had simply learned not to let people walk all over me. The following weeks were full of calls, text messages. Even my aunt on my dad's side contacted me to tell me I was destroying the family and that I should reconsider. But I made my decision. I had cried enough over people who clearly didn't value my pain or my dignity, and I wasn't going to let them ruin the most important day of my new life. Adrian supported me completely. He told me his family would be there for me, and that we would build our own family based on respect and real love, not toxic obligations. The wedding day arrived and my parents followed through on their threat. They didn't show up. I'm not going to lie. It hurt to see it. When I walked toward the altar and looked at the empty seats where they should have been sitting, I felt a lump in my throat. But then I saw Adrian waiting for me with that smile of his. I saw Abigail crying with happiness beside me. I saw Adrian's parents and siblings who had welcomed me with open arms. And I realized that was what mattered. The ceremony was perfect. The venue was beautiful with hanging lights and white flowers everywhere. We danced until 3 in the morning, and it was genuinely one of the best days of my life, despite everything. Adrian and I went on our honeymoon to a beach resort for 2 weeks, one of those places with bungalows over the water and all-inclusive service, and it was exactly what I needed to disconnect from all the drama. I didn't check my messages. I didn't talk to anyone in my family. It was just Adrian and me existing in that perfect newlywed bubble. And when we came back, I felt renewed somehow. It's been like 8 months since the wedding, and my parents and I basically have no relationship. They sent me a text message a few weeks after we got back from the honeymoon asking if I was ready to talk and fix things, and I responded that I had nothing to fix, that they had chosen to support Angela over me and that decision had consequences. My mom wrote to me saying that I was her daughter too and that they missed me, but that they couldn't agree with me on excluding Angela from my life, and that's where the conversation ended. Sometimes I feel bad. I wonder if I was too harsh or if I should have handled things differently. But then I remember everything that happened and I know that setting boundaries was the right thing, even if my family doesn't understand it. Adrian asks me often if I'm okay with all this, and the truth is that yes. I'm not going to say it's easy or that it doesn't hurt, because it hurts a lot to know that my parents basically abandoned me for not forgiving a horrible betrayal, but I also feel liberated in a way. I no longer have to pretend that things are okay when they're not. I no longer have to justify my feelings or minimize my pain to make others comfortable, and that has a value I can't fully explain. I built a new life with Adrian. We have a nice apartment, we're thinking about adopting a dog, we work on our careers, and we're happy in a simple and honest way that I never had with Philip. As for Angela, I don't know what happened to her, and honestly, I'm not interested in knowing. I blocked all her social media. I don't ask about her, and if anyone tries to mention her, I change the subject immediately. There are people who tell me that someday I'm going to want to reconcile, that family is important and that resentment only hurts me, but I don't see it that way. I don't have resentment. I simply have very clear boundaries about who deserves to be in my life and who doesn't. And people who consciously betray you and then expect you to forget it because they're family definitely don't qualify to be near me. Maybe that sounds harsh. I don't know. But that's where I am right now, and I feel at peace with that decision. Last week was my 30th birthday, and Adrian organized a surprise dinner for me with Abigail and other close friends. It was intimate and perfect. Exactly how I like things. My parents didn't even send a message, which I guess was to be expected, but it didn't ruin my day, like maybe it would have a year ago. I'm learning that the family you choose can be stronger and more real than blood family, and that it's okay to let go of relationships that do you more harm than good, even if those relationships are with your parents or siblings. It's not that I don't love them or that I don't care about them. It's that I finally care more about myself, and that's something I never thought I'd say. I guess if there's something I learned from all this, it's that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or allowing them to keep hurting you, and that sometimes the only way to move forward is by completely cutting off what's holding you back. I don't know if my parents will ever understand that or if they're going to keep thinking I'm the bad guy in the story, but honestly, it's not my problem anymore. I did my part trying to explain to them. I set my boundaries clearly, and if they decided that supporting Angela's betrayal was more important than validating my pain, then that was their choice, not mine. And I'm okay with that, really. Because at the end of the day, I have Adrian. I have AB. I have a life I built from scratch after everything fell apart, and that's more than I thought I would have when I read those emails 3 years ago. Sitting alone in my apartment with a broken heart. So yeah, things aren't perfect, And I'll probably never have that big family reconciliation that apparently I'm supposed to want. But I'm happy. I'm healthy. And I'm surrounded by people who genuinely love and respect me. And in the end, that's enough.